Hello everyone and welcome to week 7, Building Innovative Business Models in Practice. This week we'll be looking to get practice and feedback on your business ideas. So in the tutorial or in the seminar, teams will present a 1-minute value proposition pitch of their new venture projects. We'll also be looking at challenging your draft business model and attempting to innovate the elements also in your business model. So the main question for this session is, how can we design or redesign our new venture or firm's business model by innovating its elements to potentially become business model innovation? The business model canvas combined with lean startup methods provides innovation possibilities across the 9 elements of the business model. However, beware of ad hoc and uncoordinated innovations. Cyril Gronholm and colleagues conducted research into the importance of business model design and its role in the success of innovations. They surveyed 331 Australian firms to assess how business model design themes, novelty, efficiency and simplicity, impacted their performance. What the research showed was that novelty-centred design themes unlock and translate the value from innovation to firm performance to a greater extent than efficiency and user simplicity. Broad innovation within the business model matters to performance essentially, but only if firms focus their business model design efforts more narrowly on coherently entrenching novelty and efficiency. Their results showed that while firms prefer business model designs that focus on user simplicity, those that are improving transaction efficiency or novelty are best able to improve performance. Most importantly, what this illustrates is the importance of business model design for innovation. We are now going to look at applying lean startup for business model innovation. The main resources used for today's session are Build, Measure, Learn by Eric Ries, Value Proposition Design by Osterwalder, Hypothesis-Driven Entrepreneurship, The Lean Startup by Eisman, and Why the Lean Startup Changes Everything by Steve Blank. I'm also using some material from the How to Build a Startup Lean Launchpad course material. A business that generates fewer revenues than it incurs costs will inevitably disappear, even with the most successful value proposition. You need to get both the business model and the value proposition right to make this happen. And doing this means that you will have to move backwards and forwards between the two, adjusting and modifying until you nail it. Getting business models right requires re-evaluation of your value proposition to check that your ideas are on track and that you are addressing any weaknesses that you might have in your model. I introduced you to the business model canvas and the value proposition canvases in week 5. This was your first attempt at defining and drafting your business idea. Now we will look at challenging your thinking and seeking to improve your business model. So it is important to ask, what value are you actually creating? This is the first thing you need to assess. What need are you satisfying and what is the value you are creating? You need to test and understand whether your value proposition is actually going to work. So to do that, we need to build more minimal viable products, MVPs, or learning objects. So there are 2 key options for a value proposition to make sure that it will actually, your business will be successful. So it will either need to be an improvement on an existing idea or it needs to be a new idea. If your idea is not new or does not improve on an existing idea, you will need an exceptional implementation strategy. Some common mistakes that people make with value propositions are it's too big or it's vague. It might be seen as just a feature of someone else's product. It could also be just nice to have instead of really, we've got to have this. Not enough customers care, or you can't find a niche in the market that is begging for the solution. If any of these things occur, you need to actually think about doing a pivot. The next part of the business model canvas that you need to reassess is your customer segments. Who are your customers? Why would they buy your suggested product or service? Is there a compelling reason for them to use or buy what you are offering? Reassess your value proposition canvas in context with the business model canvas. Do you have a value proposition canvas for each of your customer segments? Each customer segment will have its own value proposition. If you have 3 customer segments, you will have 3 value propositions. Have you defined users versus payers? Your users might really want your product, but they might not be the people paying for it. If that is the case, will the people paying for it buy it? Sometimes your products or services might have multiple users involved. Will all of the people in the chain insist on buying and using your product? There are also dual or multi-sided platform business models. This is where you may have different customers interacting. For example, with Uber, you have ride sharers and drivers. Both of these are customers of Uber. So with multi-sided models, you need to have multiple versions of the value proposition and revenue model. You may also have multiple versions of other aspects of the business model, such as channels or customer relationships. If your business model is like this, it might be a good idea to create a business model canvas and value proposition canvas for each customer segment. Airbnb is an example of a double-sided platform. It is a website that connects local residents with extra space to rent out and travellers looking to stay. In such a case, the business model needs to hold 2 value propositions, one for the local residents or the hosts and one for the travellers. For each of the customer segments, make sure that you have the customer profile right. For example, jobs describe the things your customers are trying to get done in their work or in their life. A customer job could be the tasks they are trying to perform and complete, the problems they are trying to solve, or the needs they are trying to satisfy. Make sure you take the customer's perspective when investigating jobs. What you think of as important from your perspective might not be as a job the customers are actually trying to get done. Customer pains describe anything that annoys your customers before, during, and after trying to get a job done, or simply prevents them from getting the job done. Pains also describe risks, that is, potential bad outcomes related to getting a job done badly or not at all. Gains describe the outcomes and benefits your customers want. Some gains are required, expected, or desired by customers, and some would surprise them. Gains include functional utility, social gains, positive emotions, and cost savings. Once you have determined the jobs, pains, and gains for a customer segment, you need to rank these according to importance for jobs, pain severity for pains, and relevance for gains. When thinking about the customer segment, you must also think about the context for the same customer. The context is very important as it might change the types of jobs or even how someone is actually going to do the jobs in that segment. So for example, we have a moviegoer here, and depending on the particular situation that she finds herself in, she may have different things that are priorities to her. So for example, if she's at home with the kids and then thinking about going to the movies, that is going to look very different to going to the movies for a date night and then also doing some personal research or going to actually see a movie related to a topic that she's interested in. The jobs or the tasks to do will change significantly based on that context. Once you have determined the customer segments and have used the customer profile to understand the jobs that they have to do, the pains and the gains, you'll then be wanting to map the value that you can create with your products and services. This is usually about 4 steps in the process. The first step being to list all of the products and services that you believe is attached to your value proposition. You can do this even if you don't have an existing value proposition. You'll still want to map out or sketch out how you intend to create value with your new idea. Then you will outline how your products and services currently help customers alleviate pains by eliminating undesired outcomes, obstacles or risks. So this is the pain relievers. Then number 3, you'll outline the gain creators. Explain how your products and services currently create unexpected or expected desired outcomes and benefits for customers. And then finally, you'll rank by order of importance across each of these aspects, the products, the services, the pain relievers and the gain creators, according to how essential they are to customers. Once you have profiled your customers and looked at each of the customer segments, and then also looked at mapping the value to those for those segments, understanding how your solutions, your products and your services are actually going to meet the needs, the pains and the gains of those customer segments, you need to determine the product market fit. And this is really about focusing on things like the gains and making sure that you're addressing the gains that matter most to your customers and making sure that they make a difference. Also focusing on headaches that matter most and are insufficiently addressed in the current service offering. So you need to be ensuring that you achieve a very tight and close fit between your value proposition and what the customer's needs, pains and jobs are. Bring the value proposition canvas and the customer segment profile together. Go through the pain relievers and gain creators one by one and check to see if they fit a customer segment, job, pain or gain. Put a check on each one that does. After you've determined the problem solution fit, you then need to get a product market fit. Product market fit takes place when you have evidence that your products and services, pain relievers and gain creators are actually creating customer value and getting traction in the market. There are many ways to assess your product market fit. You can use experiments, design thinking approaches, create A/B tests, interview customers, set up dummy websites for click-through rates. There are many more. These are just some of the ideas that you can use. You must, however, test your ideas in some way to see whether the real customers will actually buy your product. Here are some resources that you could use to think about the types of tests that you can try. Use the 10 questions of great value propositions to constantly assess the design of your value proposition. Draw on them to integrate your customer insights. Integrate them when you decide which prototypes to explore further and test with customers. The 10 questions are: 1. Is it embedded in a great business model? 2. Does it focus on the most important jobs, most extreme pains, and the most essential gains? 3. Does it focus on unsatisfied jobs, unresolved pains, and unrealised gains? 4. Does it concentrate on only a few pain relievers and gain creators, but does those extremely well? 5. Does it address functional, emotional, and social jobs all together? 6. Does it align with how customers measure success? 7. Does it focus on jobs, pains, or gains that large number of customers have, for which a small number are willing to pay a lot of money? Number 8. Does it differentiate from competition in a meaningful way? Number 9. Does it outperform competition substantially on at least one dimension? And finally, number 10, is it difficult to copy? Owlet was a business who created a wireless monitoring of babies' blood, oxygen, heart rate and sleep data. They started with an initial idea for an opportunity, which was monitoring pulse oximetry with a wireless device between the baby and the visual display. Their initial customer segments were nurses and hospital administrators. They started by interviewing nurses, and of the 58 nurses interviewed, 93% preferred the idea of a wireless monitoring device. However, when they interviewed hospital administrators, 0% were ready to pay more for a wireless device, as they said that ease of use was not a pain if it wasn't cost effective. So they pivoted the segment from nurses to worried parents. This capitalised on a value proposition of peace of mind for parents. A wireless monitor that collects baby's data and sends it to the parent's smartphone with alerts. The plan was to distribute it via baby stores. To validate this, they did parent interviews. Of 105 interviews conducted, 96% said that they would adopt the wireless monitoring device. They also did an MVP landing page, and for this they had 17,000 views and 5,500 shares in Facebook, 500 positive comments by parents. And this was around a cost of about $220 for the advertising. They then did an A/B price test, rental versus sales, at a price of around 200 plus for the sales price. Of the 1,170 people tested, 299 was the best price achieved. At this point they were all excited and seemed to be going well. However, they then discovered that the Food and Drug Administration, so the FDA, clearance for a baby alarm for 1 year is $120,000 to $200,000. So they pivoted again. Peace of mind, but for less worried parents. They went for a more minimal, less risky product, an infant health tracker, but without the alarm. This was for the less worried parent. This then needed to be revalidated. Finally, they retested using an interview on location, and when they did this, they discovered that 20% of 81 people would adopt the tracker. The third step in the business model canvas is the channels. Here we are looking to provide the best, most efficient and seamless way for your product or service to get from the company to the customer. Your channels describe how your company communicates with and reaches your customer segments to deliver your value proposition. You need to think about how your customers want to be reached. Will you need different channels for different segments? Which channels work best? Which ones are the most cost effective? How are you integrating these with the customer routines? Your communication, distribution and sales channels comprise your company's interface with customers. Your channels are customer touchpoints that play an important role in the customer experience. Your channels serve several functions, including raising awareness among customers about a company's products and services, helping customers evaluate a company's value proposition, allowing customers to purchase specific products and services, delivering a value proposition to customers, and providing post-purchase customer support. There are many types of channels that can be used, and finding the right mix of channels to satisfy your customers or how your customers want to be reached is crucial in bringing a value proposition to the market. You can choose between reaching your customers through your own channels, through partner channels, or through a mixture of both. When thinking about or considering the channel aspect of the business model canvas, you should also consider the phases that a customer must pass through when evaluating or deciding to purchase your product or service. The first phase is awareness. And in this, we have to decide how we're going to educate customers about the characteristics of the product or services that we have. This is the marketing and advertising phase. It is how you let your customer know about your value proposition. Phase 2 is the evaluation step. How can we aid customers in evaluating our value proposition? This is the promotion or the try me before you buy me phase. The customer will evaluate, read about, or use your product and form an opinion about it. A good company will educate customers with other competitors in the market and help them to evaluate their choices. In this way, you make your value proposition clearer to them and why you are a better option than your competitors. Phase 3 is the purchase phase. How can we help customers in buying their preferred product or service? This is really the sales process. Phase 4 is the delivery step. How do we deliver the promised value proposition to the customer? This is the fulfillment stage and defines how the product will reach the customer. Finally, phase 5 is after sales. How can we provide after sales customer care and support? This phase creates advocates for your products and services amongst your target segment. This stage provides a person for the customer to call when they have a problem or question about your product. The higher the value of the product, the more likely it is that they will require after-sales support. Think creatively about your distribution channels. Can you think of ways to innovate within your business and also within your industry? Step 4 in the business model canvas is about customer relationships. Customer relationships is about getting, keeping and growing customers. Customer relationships describe the type of relationship a company establishes with its specific customer segments. Customer relationships are driven by customer acquisition, customer retention and boosting sales. In other words, you need to get, keep and grow your customer relationships. Customer relationships require a strategy that covers 3 important steps: getting, keeping and growing customers. The get strategy refers to the efforts that you make with your customers to actually get them to purchase your product. So being aware of your solution, being interested in your solution, considering buying it from you. So based on their initial interest in your solution, you must present some advantages of your product when compared to other alternatives, and then purchasing your solution. This is a stage in which you will work to solve any doubt your customers might have to take that last step. Are there any worries about your startup, about your price, and so on? If you're building a digital solution, you will have to replace the purchase phase with an acquisition and activation step. Acquisition refers to the step taken by the customer that represents the beginning of the relationship with your startup. It provides you with evidence that they are willing to use your solution. So for instance, if a customer sign up for your free tier of your app, or you have a free tier of your app, then you've actually acquired a user. That's the evidence that they want to start using it. On the other hand, activation is the evidence that a customer is actually using your solution. The next part of this strategy is actually about keeping customers. And it's not just about convincing people to buy from you or to start using your solution. You need to define a strategy to make them repeat the process. Think about all the effort that you have to do to convince someone to start using your product. It costs you time and money. However, if your current customers are satisfied with the value you deliver, they will keep buying, and consequently, your get costs for them in the future will be 0. Customer retention is mainly associated with customer satisfaction, as well as the advantages of buying from you when compared to alternatives. So when designing strategies to retain your customers, always consider measuring their satisfaction and understanding what is not contributing to customer success or what could be improved. And remember to constantly analyse market alternatives that may convince your customers to stop using your product. The final step is the growing of the customers. You must define a strategy to grow the relationship that you have with your customers. And to grow means to look for opportunities of making your current customers buy more from you or make them bring new customers to your solution. What kind of complementary products or services you could sell them after buying from you? Maybe it would be a good strategy to break the product into several smaller products so you can convince them to buy them in multiple steps. Besides making current customers buy more from your startup, you might also incentivize them to refer your solution to other customers. Referrals are certainly a very powerful source that you should try to nurture to grow your customer base. The final element of this is the viral loop, as explained by Steve Blank. A viral loop is formed through a positive customer experience with your value proposition. For example, if a customer is happy with your product, they will be excited to share the news about it with their friends, family, or others. This viral effect will create quick and cost-effective awareness or brand recognition for your company. Steve Blank's ideology behind the viral loop is actually very simple. How can we use current customers who are satisfied with our product or service to our advantage? How can we use these customers to help promote our products and services? So what kind of relationship does each customer segment expect us to establish? When we're thinking about this, we need to think about the atmosphere, the customer service, and interactions. Which ones have we established? This will rely on preconceived notions about your industry. How costly are the customer relationships? You must think about this, the customer acquisition cost. How are they integrated with the rest of your business model? There are all different kinds of categories of customer relationships that you might want to consider, such as personal assistance, dedicated personal assistance, self-service, automated services, communities, or co-creation. They're just a few. Facebook, as an example, relies on communities, where people invest a significant amount of time in creating their profile and setting up their connections. This means that there are high switching costs for them to leave the platform. Dropbox uses aggressive peer-to-peer promotions and referrals. As part of your business model, have you thought about how you can innovate with your customer relationships? You need to think about within your business, how you can innovate, or maybe even within your industry. The fifth part of the business model canvas is about revenue streams. Revenue streams outline how you can earn money. What price is each of your customer segments truly willing to pay? Identify each possible revenue stream per customer segment. Think hard about the possible pricing mechanisms per revenue stream. Surprisingly, pricing can often be a source of differentiation. Pricing mechanisms can include auctioning, bargaining, fixed list prices, market or volume dependent prices, or even yield management. A business model can also involve transactional revenues resulting from one-time customer payments, so for example, a sale, or reoccurring payments, like a subscription. In the context of the revenue model, think also about any other benefits you might be getting. Not all value is monetary. The main categories of revenue streams are really in two main types. Firstly, transaction revenue and reoccurring revenue. Strong businesses have many ways of generating income, and the businesses that rely on merely one revenue stream risks oblivion with that revenue stream if it dries up. Revenue models need to consider the direct sales or the strategy for revenue, as well as the tactics such as pricing, fees, subscriptions, etc. Successful businesses rarely have a single revenue stream. Employing multiple revenue streams hedge your bets in case part of your operation fails or the business environment changes. Here are some examples of revenue streams. So we have an asset sale revenue stream where essentially customers pay for a good or service. Selling assets is a one-time transaction and therefore fairly limited. This is a simple form of creating revenue, though it's short-term and depending on the market can be difficult to predict. The next kind is usage fees. Customers pay for access to a service. Usage fees leveraging existing infrastructure to continue generating revenue. These fees can be valuable income streams when the business model includes services that need to be regularly repeated. So hotels operate through this revenue model, as do package delivery companies and co-working space companies. The next kind is renting, leasing and lending as a stream. In this, customers pay for the temporary rights to use an asset for a fixed time period. Renting, leasing and lending assets lets companies generate revenue while the customer incurs only limited charges. This revenue stream is similar to the previous example of usage fees, but rather than service revenue, renting and lending assets use material to generate income. The next one is subscription fees. Customers incur a subscription fee for ongoing access to a service. This is a recurring revenue stream, though you need to constantly refresh what you're offering through your subscription. In this revenue model, customers want persistent access to a service that they value. Examples here might include things like a gym membership, which is becoming, or streaming services, which are becoming more and more popular within the media industry. Another model is the brokerage fees. Consumers invest in the work of a mediator. A brokerage fee acknowledges the value of the access or the expertise that this intermediary provides. Brokers serve as a go-between in the revenue models, working on behalf of a customer and taking a percentage of the transaction as their fee. These revenue streams are for the basis of businesses and real estate agents and credit card merchants. Service providers who charge commissions are usually following this kind of business model. Another one, or finally the last one on this page here, is advertising fees. Clients pay for marketing products and services. Marketing agencies create advertisements and messaging that is broadcast through media and other channels to reach potential customers. Most of us are pretty familiar with advertising. We're exposed to marketing messages across all kinds of things like television, radio, and the internet, and it's even on people's clothing and maybe even your own. Things to consider about with revenue streams include how people will pay you, where the value actually lies in your value proposition and where that originates, the margins you should target, how you will finance the innovation, and whether innovating in the revenue stream is a great way to differentiate your particular business model. Can you think of ways to innovate in the revenue stream? We will talk more about this in the coming weeks. The key activities in the business model canvas include the actions that are imperative for a business to work. Basically, these are the essential tasks that the company must carry out in order to achieve its business purpose. In other words, to meet the value proposition, achieve its customer segments, sustain a relationship, and create revenue streams. Key activities vary according to the organisation's business model. A product-oriented company, for example, includes research among its main activities. A company whose income is based on third-party contracts must prioritise the management of channels. There are several kinds of categories of key activities. Production, which covers all the actions related to product development, manufacturing and delivery. It usually involves significant quantities of a product. Problem solving is a core activity of organisations seeking unique solutions to specific problems. So hospitals, consultancies and most service providers are good examples of this. These are usually enterprises that involve a lot of knowledge management, as well as a focus on continual learning and training. You also have platform or network types. Networks, combination platforms, software and brands can function as platforms. The company develops a platform and works continuously to keep it running through platform management and promotion, in addition to providing services accordingly. You also have research and development, which is ones where they collaborate with other areas of the company and from production to sales and through to marketing. Typical sorts of functions are new product research, new product development, or possibly updating existing products, doing quality checks, those types of things. You also have marketing, and it's the department that's responsible for growth and value propositions of the company. Among its functions, which can also become key activities, are things like strategy, market research, product development and communications. It might provide sales support and events. You also have sales and customer service, which play a key role in the customer experience. They are mainly responsible for customer loyalty and also who will become a defender and divulger of your brand. They are often the front team of the company, and they're also the ones who respond to customer complaints and have the power and tools to circumvent the situation and seek client satisfaction. So these are sort of the key activities that are usually in most businesses. The term value chain refers to the various business activities and processes involved in creating a product or performing a service. A value chain can consist of multiple stages of a product or service's life cycle, including research and development, sales, and anything in between. Because of ever-increasing competition for unbeatable prices, exceptional products, and customer loyalty, companies must continually examine the value they create in order to retain their competitive advantage. A value chain can help a company to discern areas of its business that are inefficient, then implement strategies that will optimize its procedures for maximum efficiency and profitability. The value chain framework is made up of 5 primary activities: inbound operations, outbound logistics, marketing and sales, service. And there are 4 secondary activities: procurement and purchasing, human resource management, technological development, and company infrastructure. The value chain concept was first described in 1985 by Harvard Business School Professor Michael Porter in his book Competitive Advantage: Creating and Sustaining Superior Performance. So how do value chains actually work? Well, the value chain framework helps organisations identify and group their own business functions into primary and secondary activities. Analysing these value chain activities, sub-activities, and the relationships between them helps organisation understand them as a system of interrelated functions. Then organisations can individually analyse each part to assess whether the output of each activity or sub-activity can actually be improved. And this is, of course, relative to the cost, time, and effort that they require. When an organisation applies the value chain concept to its own activities, it's called a value chain analysis. There are many benefits of understanding this in terms of value chains. The value chain framework helps organisations understand and evaluate sources of positive and negative cost efficiency. Conducting a value chain analysis can help businesses in the following ways. First of all, they can support decisions for various business activities. Secondly, they can diagnose points of ineffectiveness for corrective action. They can also understand linkages and dependencies between different activities and areas in the business. So, for example, issues in human resources management and technology can permeate nearly all business activities. It can also be used to optimise activities to maximise output and minimise organisational expenses. It can create or potentially create a cost advantage over competitors, and it also helps with understanding core competencies and areas for improvement. A value chain analysis can offer important benefits. However, when emphasising a granular process or the details in a value chain, it's important to still give proper attention to an organisation's broader strategy. So don't focus just on solely on the details, but to look at it in the context of that broader strategy. There are some activities that are normally associated with your industry, and then there are activities that you have to perform to enact your differentiation. List them all from most critical to nice to have. So, for example, what activities do a fast food restaurant have to do as a minimum? What activities will help them differentiate their product and their business model? Think about what are the key activities that you need to do with your business model. Can you innovate or do something different to what happens in your industry? The next area of the business model canvas is key resources. These are the most important resources or the assets to make your business model work. There are 4 categories of key resources. Human resources or human force is one of the key resources of a business model, and this has various meanings and structures in different businesses. So for example, when it comes to a factory in a small town, the best human forces or human resources are those who live in that town. The cost of hiring a non-native as an employee is quite high. On the other hand, to sell your products, you need to satisfy the locals through employing them. Another example, when we talk about something like a software company where the conditions are very different, human resources should be the professionals, highly skilled in their job, no matter where they come from. Despite the importance of human resources, many startups do not consider it a challenge. They'll often start without employing people that they need to be able to create value. However, such a move is generally to the detriment of the startup. And this is because as the business grows, and if the business model is to be implemented on a larger scale, the provision and development of human resources can be a bottleneck of the growth. Usually startups that don't care about hiring human resources also don't clearly define the role of their core members, and this can lead to conflicts and disagreement when the startup reaches profitability. The next type of key resource is the physical resource. So physical resources, there are quite a wide range of these types of things. Here are a few examples. So you've got things like office equipment, machinery, servers, telecommunication equipment, whatever raw materials your business might have. You need to have transparency around all of these assets, these physical resources. You need to set it up so that you have a clear picture of the business in your mind so that you can define physical resources as much as possible and list them all. The third one is financial resources. We are always reminded of the money when we need to start our own business and when it comes to resources. So it's natural to expect a room for financial resources or room for financial resources in our business model. These sources may be things like cash, supplier credit, or some other form of funding. However, attracting and managing financial resources is a complicated process that requires using professionals. So you need to keep this critical point in mind. Don't limit yourself to one figure when determining the required financial resources. So for example, don't say, I need X million dollars to start this business. Instead, be very specific with your cash flow. And finally, the last one is the intellectual or intangible resources. Although these resources play an important role in the business model and its success, they are sometimes completely or entirely overlooked. There are a few examples of intellectual or intangible resources, such as things like legal licenses, specific technical knowledge, technologies, brand, or data. Sometimes you can delay providing some of these resources through such as registering your brand. However, in some business models, it's not possible. For example, if you're sure that you will need a well-known brand to launch your product, you probably need to design your business model to fit one of the existing businesses. Otherwise, you will simply fail in the form of an independent business. Sometimes getting some of these resources takes time and effort. For example, you may have to study and read a lot of books and articles. In other cases, you may need to sign a contract. For example, a license agreement to use a company's technical knowledge. So what resources do you require to perform the activities required to create and deliver your value proposition? Here are some examples of ways to think about the resources you have or might have to use. So there's things like alternative resources, renewables. Tesla is an example of that. We have the sharing economy, which it uses asset-light models, such as Uber. We have online and mobile ecosystems like Apple, and Apple is another example of leveraging brand and reputation. Can you think of an organisation that leverages knowledge as a resource? Section 8 of the Business Model Canvas is about key partners. A business partnership is when two commercial entities form an alliance, which may either be a really loose relationship where both entities retain their independence and are at liberty to form more partnerships, or it might be an exclusive contract which limits the two companies to only that one relationship. This building block refers to the network of suppliers and partners that make the business model effective. The reasons for a company opting for a partnership are myriad, but healthy partnerships are instrumental in making a business a success or a failure. A company can optimise its resource utilisation, create new resource streams, or mitigate risks behind major business decisions by taking on a partner before starting a new course of action. It is important to note that your organisation may be partnering with a number of organisations is required for various reasons, but not all relationships will be key to your business. Partnerships can change over the course of a business life cycle as well. The types of partnerships that may be necessary during year one of your startup will possibly differ significantly from the nature of the required relationships or partnerships in year three. When evaluating the various key partnerships that your business requires, it's fruitful to analyse the nature of the partnership based on the following key questions. Which partnerships are critical to our business? Who are our critical suppliers? Which of our suppliers and partners are sourcing our key resources? What type of partnerships would suit our needs? And what is the best cluster or supply chain where I should be located? Partners and partnerships can be categorised into 4 different types. Firstly, strategic alliances. These types of alliances are between non-competitors. So for example, if you're working through different channels, like a news agency, it can supply news to both online and offline channels. The second one is co-opetition. There can be strategic partnerships between partners. Such a partnership would help spread the risk both companies might decide to take. It may also help when both partners are trying to do something new. So additionally, it could mean a confirmed supply stream. For example, there is a need for earth metals in mobile phones. So securing the supply of rare earth metals could be the reason for two competitors to form a strategic partnership. This is co-opetition. Third type of partnership is joint ventures. Another thing that you might think about doing is where both partners could have a mutual interest in developing a new business, possibly due to the emergence of a new market or access to a new geographic area. Both organisations will only opt for such of an option if they can both provide some inputs into the business. Hence, a Dutch company that specialises in producing cheese might choose to go into a joint venture with a milk production local company to start making cheese in a new region. The fourth kind of relationship is a buyer-supplier relationship, and these are the most common types of partnerships, which assures that you have a reliable source of suppliers coming in for your supplier, and this means that they have a steady, confirmed buyer for their product. The final part of the business model canvas is the cost structure. And cost structure refers to all the ways a business approaches paying its bills. Such costs take many forms. The fixed cost of a building rental, the variable costs of hourly wages, and sometimes unpredictable costs of repairs or a disaster response. How a business prepares for fixed and variable costs, overhead expenses, production supplies, and any number of other concerns must be completely reflected in its cost structure. The cost structure is a combination of the many expenses incurred over a set period of time. The business model canvas introduces cost structure in various ways, and cost is always part of the equation when considering any innovation. Your overall approach to doing business must always consider cost structure, and you'll need to identify which costs incurred by the business are unavoidable and among the key elements of your work, or represent the investments that would be best used elsewhere. Always closely assign costs to innovation so you're making the most of your key resources. When considering cost structure, there are a number of specific elements to keep in mind, such as fixed costs, variable costs, cost allocation, and cost pool. In the business model canvas, cost drives innovation as we seek to create value through unique cost strategies. While cost structure as a complete concept would take many lectures and articles to properly explain, the most important ones, or the primary components that should receive your attention, are the following. So the value-driven cost structure. In this, provide more value and generate more revenue through premium services and products. A cost-driven cost structure. Create the leanest possible cost structure through things like automation, outsourcing, and low-priced value propositions. Economies of scale, so create cost advantages as the output expands. And economies of scope, create cost advantages as the scope of operations expands. Cost structures play a key role in the cost model of your business model canvas. The cost structure concept helps guide how you target innovation and value proposition development. Through understanding cost structures, you can aim to reduce costs as well as make the most from every cost your business incurs. Think about how you can innovate in your industry or in your business model with cost structures. So now we've covered the whole business model canvas. And if you have drafted out your business model, you will have options in each one of these 9 segments. But at this stage, they're really guesses, 9 guesses of what you think your business model canvas should look like. At this point, I want to remind you of the Lean Startup method and the work by Eric Ries, and the assumptions, hypothesis, and measures that you should be developing. You should also be populating your table of assumptions for testing. You need to be conducting your own cheap experiments, tests, and explorations to understand your customers and the problem-solution fit, as well as the product-market fit. Have you got the right segment? Does your value proposition really target a significant pain or gain? So what happens if you find something doesn't work, or you have some kind of unexpected results? You need to pivot and think about what needs to change about your proposed solution or other element of your business model. In the context of the business model canvas and Lean Startup, pivot means a radically modified version of the entire MVP or some part of it. The change of direction is crucial if experiments have shown that the originally intended solution does not work, or that no one will buy it. The right time for a radical change is right now. Frequently, it is the gut feeling that decides when this change of direction is needed. Do it while it's cheap. Check the following types of pivots to see if any of these are needed in your business offering. So we have the zoom out pivot. The MVP becomes a part of a larger product or offering. The zoom in pivot, a single component of the MVP becomes the new product or service. We have a platform pivot. An app with function turns into a business ecosystem or a transaction platform. A channel pivot, where the physical or digital channels are changing. A value capture pivot. The value creation and the business area involved in it are changing. A customer need pivot. The customer needs are changing or you have misjudged them. Customer segment pivot. The customer target group or segment for the MVP is changing. Business architecture pivot. It's a reversal, high to low margin or with low volume, or low margin to high volume. An engine growth pivot, so the change of the growth model from linear to exponential. Or a technology pivot, new technology for improved performance, cost savings, or data models. You need to keep working on your business model to ensure that the elements are sound and that your model is robust. So finally, by working on your model while it is still low fidelity, low cost, and you have not invested heavily in products or expensive production, you can learn and evolve your solution. Do not rush to build. You need to learn from your failures whilst they are still cheap. However, that only works if you actually learn from the failures and incorporate these changes into your model. Remember, failure is not a dirty word. Failure is about learning and evolving. It's not a judgment or a measure of worth, but it is a sign of good strategic thinking and of taking educated risks.